Last week, the Supreme Court agreed to hear an appeal by a former high school football coach who was suspended and later fired for his refusal to stop praying on the field after games. Now, the Supreme Court took up the appeal after a lower court ruling rejected the coach's claims that the school district's actions violated his First Amendment rights to free speech and religious freedom. Joining me exclusively to discuss this case is the former coach of Bremerton High School in Washington State, Joseph Kennedy, and special counsel for litigation and communications for the First Liberty, representing Coach Joe, Jeremy Dys. Thank you both for being here. Joe, you served as an assistant football coach at your alma mater, Bremerton, from 2008 to 2015. You made a promise to God that win or lose, you would give a prayer of thanks after every game, and you prayed on the field after every game for all the 7 years you were there as coach. When and why did your praying on the field become a problem with the school board?
Yeah, very interestingly enough, it actually came from a compliment that was received by one of the school administrators from another school administrator who saw what our football program was doing and called and gave a compliment of what we were doing was awesome. So that's how it all became about, was, somebody thinking what we were doing was great.
Unbelievable. Joe, according to reports, the school district instructed you that you could pray so long as you were not leading your players in prayer, and you complied with that request. But then the school district issued a new policy that said you could not pray where others might see you. How is that constitutional?
That's the thing. I really needed to get legal help because, I'm a high school football coach. I'm a former Marine. I know, what the Constitution says of the freedom of religion and freedom, of speech. And then all of a sudden it doesn't apply to me. If they want to stop me praying with students, hey, their school, their rules. It might be unfortunate, but I complied with everything. But when they said I can no longer pray and they took away my rights, that's where I just, the Marine came out in me, and they had a fight on their hands.
Yeah, well, it's not only a right to free speech, a right to practice religion, but also freedom of assembly. Jeremy, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which sided with the school district, said that Coach Joe was engaging in, quote, public speech of an overtly religious nature, end quote, while on the job as a public employee. They added that the school district could have violated the Constitution by, quote, allowing the coach to pray at the conclusion of football games in the center of the field with students who felt pressured to join him. How can this be when the coach engaged in non-coerced private prayer, which he didn't lead the players in?
Yeah, that's a question that the Supreme Court is going to have to answer here, because the implications of that decision are so wide-ranging that if a teacher were seen bowing her head in prayer over her lunch in the cafeteria by students, that would be an establishment of religion, according to the school district, and that teacher could be terminated for it. Or if a teacher wore a yarmulke or hijab or a crucifix around her neck, those are all grounds for dismissal, because those are overt, how did the court put it there? Overt displays of religion by the teachers here, and that's apparently forbidden by the school district. Well, of course, the First Amendment doesn't say that. Instead, the First Amendment protects coaches like Joe Kennedy to be able to take a knee in silent prayer for 15 or 20 seconds, which is exactly what he did and was fired for. What one administrator called a fleeting prayer while he was at the 50-yard line. And if that's going to be allowed to stand, then the freedom of religion at this point, the free exercise thereof, really means very little in this country.
Yeah, well, I don't understand this case. I mean, if he wanted to stay there for a fleeting prayer for 10 seconds or an hour, that's nobody's business but his and those who decide to join him. Doesn't this violate, and I guess you all are arguing this not only as a First Amendment argument, but are you also including the freedom of assembly as well in that, in the religious rights and the free speech rights?
We'll include everything that'll stick to the wall when we go to the Supreme Court of the United States, of course. But look, no one should be banned from praying just because they can be seen by students. And that's exactly what happened here. And I think it's really important for us to remember just how many times the school district here has has moved the goalposts. Coach Kennedy, all he's wanted from the very beginning was the opportunity to take one knee in silent prayer for 15, maybe 20 seconds, as if he was tying his shoes out on the 50-yard line, but he was praying. And they said because he can be seen by students, well, that's an endorsement by the state of religion that was somehow unlawful. The only accommodation that they were willing to give was to say, hey, you could go run in the janitor's closet or up in the press box to have your prayer. But no one should have to hide their faith in the janitor's closet or run up to the press box to be able to do that. Students are able to understand that that's Coach Kennedy praying, that's Joe Kennedy himself out there praying, and understand that the First Amendment actually protects that right to be able to do that very thing. No one should be banned from praying in public.
Yeah. Well, this case was rejected by the Supreme Court in 2019, although Justice Sam Alito wrote at the time, quote, "The Ninth Circuit's understanding of the free speech rights of public school teachers is troubling and may justify review in the future. What is perhaps most troubling is the Ninth Circuit's opinion is language that can be understood to mean that a coach's duty to serve as a good role model requires the coach to refrain from any manifestation of religious faith, even when the coach is plainly not on duty." Coach Joe, your thoughts when you read that, and I can only imagine that you're uplifted that the Supreme Court is at least reviewing this case.
Oh, absolutely. It was amazing that, what the lower court said. And I mean, if any of my players will ever see me and being a good role model, I don't know why thanking, God or, thanking anybody for what they did out in the football field is somehow, a bad role model. And it doesn't stop after the football field. I go to church, I pray before my meals when my family and I go out to, a restaurant. So am I going to be banned from actually praying anywhere in a public? I can't understand any of it, and I'm just so blessed that the Supreme Court actually took a look at this, because I'm like you. I'm absolutely boggled by this, and I don't understand the law, but it seems really silly to me.
Yeah, no, it seems punitive and targeted at you. I mean, does this mean any public official has to refrain from grace before meals in public because it might be seen as a public endorsement of religion? I mean, none of this follows. This is crazy. Jeremy, why do you think the Supreme Court decided to review it at this time?
Well, I think they saw what they needed to see when we brought back more information to them this time. And look, things just got worse. You read from the first Ninth Circuit opinion, the second Ninth Circuit opinion here, especially Judge Smith's opinion in that case, in the dismissal for en banc reasons. Hey, he said that not only is Coach Joe, trying to just put on a show here by engaging in prayer, which is the last thing he was attempting to accomplish. He said at the very end that Coach Joe was not following the instructions of the Sermon on the Mount, and he was effectively a bad Christian. And on top of all this, that's a federal judge trying to sit in judgment of how Coach Kennedy practices his faith. Well, that's precisely why we have First Amendment, so that federal judges are never sitting in judgment over someone's free exercise of religion. Right. If promise in Tinker v. Des Moines means anything, that neither students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights when they walk through the schoolhouse gates, it has to mean that he can take a knee in silent prayer by himself for 15 or 20 seconds after a football game. To say otherwise devoids or empties the First Amendment of all meaning.
Yeah. Following the announcement that the Supreme Court would be hearing your case, Coach Joe, Americans United for the Separation of Church and State CEO Rachel Laser, representing the school districts, released this statement: "No child attending public schools should have to pray to play school sports. The lower courts have repeatedly ruled in the school district's favor, and the Supreme Court should likewise recognize that the Bremerton School District did the right thing to protect the religious freedom and ultimately the safety of children," end quote. Joe, did you ever force your players to pray or give preferential treatment to those players?
I'm in agreement with them. If I force my players to pray to play, I should have been fired. Anybody forcing somebody to exercise faith of any kind or banning them, it's just as bad. The whole idea that I would ever do that. I've had players that were non-believers and approached me. Well, guess what? Those are the guys that are leading my team. Those are my team captains, because they're not afraid to stand up for what they believe in. praying to play is just the most ridiculous thing. And I got like 400 kids that I coached over the years. Find somebody who would ever say anything like that. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Jeremy, what do you make of Rachel Lazer's statement that the Bremerton School District protected religious freedom and the safety of children, and the Supreme Court should follow the lower court rulings? Was the safety of children ever in question in this case?
This is absolutely backwards what she's been saying all along here, because the facts just simply don't comport with reality that as she presents them. The reality is this: that Coach Kennedy from the very beginning has just sought one thing, and that was to take a knee in silent prayer by himself. He's done absolutely everything he can to avoid a lawsuit. It was only because Bremerton School District continued to move the goalposts in this game, in this issue, that we're at the Supreme Court of the United States. At any moment, they could have restored this and just simply accommodated him for 15 or 20 seconds on a knee in silent prayer at the 50-yard line by himself. It's important to remember when they said, hey, you can't pray with the kids, he said, absolutely, I get it. Those are your rules, and I understand. And he stopped, and the school district complimented him for stopping. They only terminated him when he was unwilling to bend on his commitment.
We shouldn't be. Yeah, you protect children's religious freedom by giving them the freedom to exercise their faith, not segregating them and marginalizing them from any religious expression or practice. That is not protecting kids' religious freedom. Sorry. Coach Joe, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments for the case in the spring. What do you hope will be the result of that, and how do you think this case will affect others who feel they can't publicly demonstrate their faith for fear of being fired or sidelined?
Well, initially, the first and foremost is, be able to coach again, to be back on the football field and just having, the ability to be a coach. Second is to be able to thank God for doing that, giving me that opportunity. So when it comes up this spring, I'm just happy they're going to hear it, and the religious freedom of all Americans. I don't care what faith you are, but that should be protected, and nobody should be told that you have to pray a certain way and you will lose your job if you have any kind of faith. That's just wrong in America.
Yeah, Coach, where do you want to coach when this is all over? Do you want to return to Bremerton?
Well, absolutely. Bremerton is, if I ever received a job offer from anywhere else, it would be, that's not even an issue. It's all about Bremerton. Me and my family, all my kids went there. I went there. We've all worked at the school district. So it's really important to give back to our, community where we grew up.
Coach Joseph Kennedy, Jeremy Dyes, I thank you both for being here, and we will keep our eyes on this case. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.